Good morning, students. In the last session, we have discussed about the concept of servlet, and within that we have gone through the concept of generic servlet and servlet interface. Today we will extend our discussion with further taking the reference of HTTP servlet. Now, if you are talking about the overview of servlet technology, within that we have gone through the concept further. But if you are reiterating the points, the following are the important points. If you are comparing servlet with the applet, the servlet are the particular programs which are running on the servlet server machine and supported by most of the web server. It demonstrates communicate via HTTP protocol. Client send HTTP request, server receives request, servlet process it, and further result is provided to the client in the form of HTML document, image, or binary data. Again, we are taking up the point associated with the servlet interface. And if you are implementing a particular program using servlet by servlet interface, in that case you have to implement all servlet methods. And many methods invoked automatically by the server similarly to applet. जैसे कि servlet में आपका paint, init और start methods होते हैं. But in case of servlet, we do have init, service, and destroy. We do have abstract classes that implement servlet interface. One is generic servlet class. Within that, most of the empty definitions associated with the servlet interface are given, but we have to provide service method implementation in generic servlet class. If you are talking about the HTTP servlet, in that case, this is a particular class which is received from javax.servlet.http package, and whenever we are trying to create our own HTTP servlet, we have to extend this class. This is again an abstract class, but if you are comparing the HTTP servlet implementation, then it will be somewhat different from generic servlet. The methods which you are considering important, the very first one is init, that receives a servlet config object and automatically called, and argument is provided, and this argument is basically very much relevant for receiving the configuration information from web.xml file. Further, you do have get servlet config method that used to retrieve the config object which you have received in the init method. Further, you do have service method that is specifically considered for implementation purpose in generic servlet, and at the same time, whenever we are implementing servlet interface directly, the service method can be considered important for implementation part. This is the particular method which used to provide the response to the client request. And last one is destroy method that used to clean up the resources allocated using init method. One thing I would like to reiterate again, init method is only called once, service method is again called again and again, and destroy method is called once at the time when servlet is terminated, or you can say when system is shut down. In that case, destroy method automatically clean up all the resources when we are exiting servlet. This is a major part which is reflecting the life cycle of various servlet. We do have generic servlet, we do have HTTP servlet that used to extend generic servlet further. We do have init method. In case of HTTP method, rather than particular call to the service method, as in case of generic servlet, we do have specific method associated with the service provision using doget and dopost. Doget and dopost are particular service method associated with HTTP servlet, where we try to provide the response to the client depending upon the method which client try to put up in the interaction during form filling. Within form, you might have method value or attribute that is either get or post. In case of get, you are able to see the entire information which is passed on from client to server on URL itself, and it's do have limitation from 2000 to 4000 bytes maximum. And in case if you are exceeding the data limit from client to server, during passage of information. In that case, you do have post method that used to handle large file content that can be passed on to the server side using dopost post method. And last one is destroy method. If you are being asked what are the life cycle method of servlet, so in that case you can tell only init, service and destroy in case of generic servlet. Otherwise, in case of HTTP servlet, rather considering service method, you are supposed to tell doget and dopost method for service response. In case if you are talking about HTTP servlet class, so in that case, base class of this is the base class for web-based servlet. Override service method, request methods. You do have get that used to retrieve the HTML document or image. Post method send the server data from HTML form. Method doget and dopost responds to the get and post called by service. Receive HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response and return void object. That means there is no return by the doget or dopost method. HTTP servlet request interface. This is basically required for retrieving the data from the client side. It do have some specific methods. They can be considered important from the client information retrieval. The very first one is get parameter. It's used to take up string value as parameter, and it returns the value of parameter name that is part of get or post. Enumeration get parameter name used to return the name of parameters. String array return value get parameter values with the string parameter name. Return array of string containing values of parameter. And further you do have cookie. It will be considered when we are supposed to manage session during the client server interaction. It used to return the cookie object. They can be used to identify client. HTTP servlet response is another type of interface which is basically required to provide the response to the client. It do have some specific methods associated with it, such as add cookie. It used to add cookie to the client side using add cookie method. We can pass on cookie object within the method. The call of method will be considered with the help of HTTP servlet response object or reference variable. Servlet output stream get output stream will retrieve you the output stream which is basically required for putting up information to the client side. Print writer get writer is another method which is basically frequently used for retrieving the output stream or character based stream that used to send the text to the client. And most of the time whenever we are interacting with the client side, we try to retrieve the object of print writer class using get writer method. And further, the next method is set content type, which is basically required for setting the content type required to pass on the information from server to client. And in case if we are passing the HTML information from server to client, in that case MIME type will be text/HTML that indicate the response to is HTML document. It helps the display of data. HTTP GET request usually get content of the specified URL, usually HTML document. Example servlet handles the HTTP GET request using click get page button in HTML document. GET request sent to the HTTP GET servlet. Servlet dynamically create HTML document displaying welcome to the servlet.